I know one thing, one prescription I was getting for a blood thinner up here is costing about $500 for 3 months. I get the Spanish Valley for $90 for 3 months.
That's a bit better drug dealer.
When is it? For what?
Which is
Well, Mac's going tomorrow. I'm going today because I have a board meeting tomorrow. I have to be at board. So I'm going today. I'm going to go halfway. I'm going to go to Richfield and then down tomorrow morning. But Mac's going tomorrow. I think Sylvia's going when?
I think it's tomorrow, but are you going to?
Yeah,
Go tomorrow.
yeah,
So I'll be done by Thursday, right?
Friday at noon. It goes till Friday at noon.
To miss Friday.
That's all right. Come for Thursday.
If anybody's here for a public comment, we've got that sign-in sheet for the public comment list.
Am I going to speak to this resolution?
Sign in to the public comment.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Okay, we want to welcome everybody here for our county commission meeting. We had a work meeting that we completed before this, but welcome everybody to our county commission meeting. We have an agenda that we intend to follow. We have all three commissioners here. Mr. Duncan from the clerk's office and Mac from our administrative office. We have several in the audience, and there is bound to be some people online. So we'll call this meeting to order. First on our agenda will be our invocation. We offer the audience a chance to participate. If anybody wants to lead us in a moment of silence or say a word of prayer, whatever you'd like to do is fine. And then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance after that. So is there anybody who wants to say our opening prayer today? Okay.
I will.
Okay, thanks. Come on up to the mic, Joel.
Heavenly Father, please lead this meeting with your guidance. We ask you for guidance, Lord, and please help us through this. And we thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Okay, if you'll rise, we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Mac, conflict of interest declarations.
Yes, this is kind of the first time that you've seen this on your agenda. This is one of the, as we went through the legislation on here, that each of the meetings we have a conflict of interest declaration. So I'll just read this the first time. You won't see the verbiage on here going forward on out, but just know that if there is a conflict. So on here, declaration of a conflict of interest, and this is in state code, section 67-16-9, conflict of interest prohibited. No public officer or public employee shall have personal investments in any business entity which will create a substantial conflict between his or her private interests and his or her public duties. So this is the time, if there's anything on the agenda that any entity that you have business dealings with, that you name those at this time. If there's none, we continue to go forward.
Okay, I have none.
Okay.
None? I don't think so. Jimmy's checking.
Jamie's checking to see out of the agenda if there's any. It's business deal. So
Yeah, I have none.
Okay.
Okay. Next is our public comment portion. Mac will give us the rules of the public comment period. And please try to stay within those boundaries. And we're anxious to hear your comment so that we can react to it. We may not react immediately, but we'll hear your comment.
All right. So with our public comments, we will take public comments both online as well as, let me make sure everybody's admitted to the meeting, as well as in the public. We typically take the public that are here in person first. You'll be allowed 3 minutes apiece to offer your public comment. Just as a note, this is not an opportunity to deliberate or ask questions and receive answers of the commissioners. This is your opportunity to provide comments to them so they can hear you as members of the public, unless sometimes the commissioners choose to ask questions regarding your public comments after you're done stating those. Like I'd mentioned, 3 minutes apiece. Please be courteous and kind in your comments, knowing that this is a public record. When you approach the podium or online, if you're here in the audience and you approach the podium, just please state your name and where you reside in the county. Then online as well. Online, if you are wishing to make a public comment, there is a feature on Zoom where you can raise your hand so that we know that you're wanting to make a public comment, or we will also offer an opportunity for you to unmute your microphone to provide those comments. And so first, going on our list, we have Joe Mullen from Monticello here. Joe.
Thank you. My name is Joe Mellon. I live in Elk Meadows. And the reason that I'm coming before you today is to ask for your help. We've been experiencing a nuisance problem, a noise problem coming from our neighbors. The latest problem that we've been having is very loud music being blasted at our house. During the day, the other morning it started up at 7:20 in the morning. Mornings before that, 8 o'clock, I phoned the sheriff's department, and our chief deputy, Freestone, was nice enough to show up with one of his deputies, and they got to experience the assault that we were getting from our neighbors. At that point, it was that screaming music throughout our whole house. We have 6 acres. There was not any place on our property that we could go to escape it. Very disturbing. This is the latest in a list of noise that we've been having to deal with. The chief deputy and the sheriff went over to talk to our neighbors, asked them to turn it down. Well, the guy that was blasting his stereo came out and said to our chief deputy, "Tell me what law I'm breaking." At this point, the chief deputy and the deputy tried to talk to these people and have them turn it down. It took a while, but they did turn it down. When the chief deputy came back to our house, he said, the county has no law regarding noise ordinances. So that our sheriff's department doesn't have any tools to reinstate the peace. Once our neighbors decide that they're going to take our peace and tranquility from our home, They get to decide when do not have any tools to stop them from blasting their stereo. So I ask the council, please expedite a nuisance or noise ordinance that will give the sheriffs the tools that they need to be able to go over, and once they determine that it is unreasonable, that they can cite them for disturbing the peace of their neighbors. Please help us, folks. We need some help, and the sheriffs need the tools that they need so that they can keep the peace. That's all we're asking. We never disturb our neighbors, ever.
Time right there, Joe.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Joe. Next one on here, I've got Stuart Smith.
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
In one of the last meetings, we did talk about the nuisance ordinance that can be enforced. Don't we have a nuisance ordinance?
We do.
But we don't.
We don't?
Oh, we don't.
No,
Uh,
we don't.
I looked into this little problem. And first of all, if they're playing music from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, that's not a nuisance.
It is to us, sir.
Well, it's not the legal definition of a nuisance. Having said that, we don't have a nuisance ordinance. The county doesn't. And it doesn't fit under the state's statute because for a public nuisance, it's got to affect 3 or more people.
So it's affecting two of us incredibly, and we have no peace or tranquility within our home because we can't get away from the loud music because it's in our home.
Joe,
Yes, sir.
we're not going to debate this right now. This is public comment only. I'm sorry. I know you're passionate about it, but
I'm sorry.
we're gonna ask Mitch to help us.
Thank you.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one on here, I've got Stuart.
My name's Stuart Smith. I also live in Elk Meadows.
Say it in a different way.
Let's see. Hi, I'm
That's the
Stuart
way.
Smith, and I live.
No, I mean, what your complaint is.
I'm also here on behalf of Elk Meadows and this nuisance. I would suggest that we check into what the decibel levels are and make that the hook we hang our hat on. If they are playing it, I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air here. Let's say 15, 20 decibels is acceptable. If they're double that, then they're in violation, and it's pretty easy to enforce that. But it needs to be. I would love to see it tacked onto the nuisance ordinance that was just discussed in the work meeting. But I'm in support of this, and I'm also a San Juan County resident. But I think that is probably the way that we would handle it.
And you're saying your property is affected by this?
I can hear the music at my property, and I'm probably a good quarter mile from there. But there are other neighbors adjacent to that property that I could get in here to testify that this guy is playing his music too loud. That's all I really need to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next one on here, we've got Brian Torgensen. Hi, Brian.
Can you hear it all the way into Monticello?
I have not heard it, but I have bad hearing, so I'm not a very good judge. My name is Brian Torgerson. I am a resident here in Monticello. However, I'm speaking on behalf of SITLA, which is the agency I work with. I think most of you know. I'm commenting on the resolution that's before the commission a little bit later about the Bluff City resolution to essentially recognize their city limits. I don't think there's any secret out there that we're looking to disconnect from Bluff city limits. It even mentions that in the resolution. This is a legal proceeding. We have a lot of other lands within the county. The Bluff city limits they're huge, frankly, considering the size of the town. It's as big as West Valley City. big as Ogden. I think they knew that it was really big when they started it, and it was probably going to need to be adjusted to meet their what they can service. They really don't provide any services at all to that property up on the bluff, up on the bench, and so. What we would hope that the county would take more of a neutral position at this point in time, let the proceedings kind of play out legally as they're most likely going to, and then kind of go from there. And I think that the county can provide us service. The main reason we're looking to disconnect is because the path forward is a lot clearer working with San Juan County. With some of our projects, namely the solar project that we've been upfront about, and it's a lot more ambiguous and concerning staying in Bluff city limits. So anyways, that's my comments. I hope you will consider them, and thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one we got Councilman Jim Sayers.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Jim Sayers. I've lived in Bluff for since early 1980s. I'm on the Bluff Town Council, and I'm here to discuss the resolution number 2023. That is before you, resolution stating the support of San Juan County for the established municipal boundaries of the town of Bluff. The established municipal boundaries of the town of Bluff were approved by the Lieutenant Governor, when we incorporated. The boundaries are large. We are attempting to protect a vital aquifer. We get groundwater in Bluff, and it's only from one aquifer. And that aquifer has been studied extensively by Bluff, and I can provide those to you if needed. And they do extend throughout the town boundaries as far as we thought we were able to go. The land that is being sought to be disconnected by SITLA and by a private party is land that is some of the very limited land that is available for development in Bluff. It's a huge area that they want to disconnect. It's 9,514 acres. SITLA has joined with a private party and a lawyer from a Salt Lake lawyer to disconnect. We have never, as a town, had any request from the private party as to anything that they would like to do with their land. We have worked with SITLA in the past. We work with people that are within our town boundaries. We work with businesses. We seek to advance everyone's good fortune in Bluff, and we have just never been approached as to anything that someone would like to do with this land, and we're open to that. So we're not clear on what SITLA or anyone else wants to do with this land, but it's important to us. Again, the town boundaries have been widely known for about 6 years now. We have, as I stated, we have worked with SITLA. We continue to work with SITLA. We have no ill feelings here. We don't believe that this should be disconnected. There are certain facts around this disconnection. For example, the application to disconnect included St. Christopher's Mission lands, which St. Christopher's Mission Administration was never notified, and other people have never been notified either. It just kind of came up. So we just want to protect our water source. We've never had any requests to work with anyone. We'd like to work with people. This is really important land to us, so we would, again, we request this be taken into serious consideration by the county commission. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, the next one up on our list is
Thank you.
Greg.
saw that on my shirt, right? That's so I know who I am.
Yes, it's you.
Hi, my name is Greg Culbreth. I live in Elk Meadows, and we're here. Well, I came in for the workshop. Was very encouraged by Mr. Mon and the other gentlemen. I don't remember. I almost have it.
Creswell.
Yeah,
Yep.
less. I got that part. About their motion forward with the nuisance ordinances, with the short-term rental things, and we have a certain amount of that that's starting or trying to happen in Elk Meadows, and that's not why we bought our property there, and not why we invested there. And I'd like to, protect my and other folks' interests in our property values there. We're starting to see some spot-sold hobby farms that are maybe pretending to be a little bigger than hobby farms, and some other things that have the potential to become nuisances. We kind of like if we can have a little help with a kind of a procedural approach to how to deal with some of these things. And we know that we can call the sheriff's office and they'll come out, but they're not real clear on what they can do and can't do, what's okay and what isn't okay. They may need a little help with that, and far be it from us to tell them how to do their job. But you guys are in a different position than we are as homeowners. So we would like some help with that. We hope that you'll see the advantage to doing the things that were mentioned at the workshop countywide rather than just in Spanish Valley. And I can see where Spanish Valley is. They're in that situation. There's a real high, I don't want to say transient, but the workforce has no place to live there. And they want to do that, and they don't want to necessarily invest themselves in permanent properties. I understand that too. And I was that age. I didn't have any intention to buy property and, build a house. I just wanted to get by from day to day and raise my family and, figure out what I was going to do the rest of my life. That wasn't important to me then, but it is more so now, and particularly where we live. And any help that we can get with a kind of a procedural approach toward the noise ordinance or noise being defined as a nuisance and what it requires to deal with those things, we'd really like some help there. So anything you can do, we appreciate. And we thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that was all of the members of the audience that we had signed up on the list. Turning to those online, I don't see any hands raised online. If there are anybody that would like to make a public comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and just state your name and where you reside in the county. Give you a second to find the unmute button. Okay, commissioners, I'm not seeing anybody unmute their phone online, so that is your public comment period for today.
Appreciate those public comments, and in reference to those, maybe we need some guidance, Mitch, from you and maybe the sheriff's department. Maybe Freestone and Palmer could weigh in with Mac and see. I know there are some CCRs out in that subdivision. I don't know how that would affect what we need to do, but I think there's more than a serious problem out there, and the people that are causing the problem don't seem to want to be helpful. And so when that happens, then you have to look for a legislative solution to the peace and tranquility of these people. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe you could do some research and report back to us what we need to do, whether we need to pass an ordinance, whether we need to do something different.
Okay.
Appreciate that. On our consent agenda today, Mac, do you want to go over that real quick?
Appreciate that. So on the consent agenda item, you have, which is item number 2 on our agenda, approval of the August 8th, 2023 Commission work session minutes. You have the approval of the August 8th, 2023 Commission meeting minutes. You have approval of the August 4th to August 31st, 2023 check registers. And then final item under your consent agenda is the approval of $19,070 for purchase order for a solar charge controller for the Cow Black Airport solar power system. These have gone out, and so we've been running our backup generators for the last several weeks. We have 2 of them out there, but we need to get this solar charge controller so we can get back on the solar panel system to feed the operations there at the airport.
Now, are those generators being run by fossil fuels?
They are, yes, and we will have to pitch in at a later date to help fund that where it was out of the control of the forward operating base operator
We
there.
just love solar if
Yeah.
we can run it by fossil fuels.
That's so true.
Okay. You have a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sylvia,
I'll second.
second by Jamie. Any further discussion or comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Recognitions, presentations.
So under here, we have a presentation and approval of the 2022 fiscal year audit report by Larson and Company PC. We have John in the audience who will give us a presentation on what his audit found. Saw you, John.
Oh, John.
Sorry, Bruce, you get this 2 days in a row.
It's okay.
Okay, well, we've completed the audit. Everything has been submitted. Lyman, I don't know if you've received anything back from the federal government yet on the acceptance. Did they send it? Okay. I haven't seen it yet, so as soon as we do that, we'll put it in our binder and finalize the binder. So I'll just go over the reports that we had are required to issue, and then communication that I have to communicate to you as a commission, and then discuss any findings that we had. So on page 1 of the audit report, actually, Mac, did you get those audit reports?
Yep, we
Okay.
handed them out.
Okay. Okay, so the big binder, the one that's bound together, the first couple paragraphs is now the opinion paragraph. It's now first. It used to be down at the bottom of the first page, but apparently the opinion is what matters most, so they put it first now. Second paragraph, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the governmental activities, the business activities, the discrete presented component units, and each major fund, and the rest of the remaining fund information. So that's an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. That's a clean opinion. There weren't any issues that we found in the audit that we would have to change that language. The basis for our opinion, we do follow certain guidelines, and that's government auditing standards as well as generally accepted auditing standards in the United States of America. So there are certain policies and procedures that we have to do as part of our audit engagement in order to give an opinion. That second paragraph under the second section is just talking about the component units. So there are 2 component units that we do not audit, and that's the mental health substance abuse and the San Juan Health Service District. We get their audits from their auditors, and so our opinion relates as far as they're concerned on what their auditors report. We don't do any testing at those 2 districts. Just remember that you are, as a commission group and your management, you're responsible for the financial statements. They're your financial statements, and our job is to test the balances and give an opinion. Also, in preparing the financial statements and really throughout the year, if there's conditions or events that arise that would prohibit you from continuing as a going concern, then you have to identify those issues and then analyze them and really figure out what you're going to do to overcome those issues. The best example that I can give most recently is COVID. That's kind of our new timeline, right? Back when COVID hit, and it sounds like we're getting ready for another round of it if you listen to the federal government. But during that time period, everybody was uncertain of how it was going to affect both private businesses as well as governments. Within the state of Utah, we kind of fended fairly well. There wasn't a lot of drop in a lot of the government revenues. However, nationwide, there were a lot of governments who really struggled and had to get some outside assistance in order to continue as a going concern or to continue to operate. what we did as auditors is made sure that you had in your financial statements a disclosure that you recognized that COVID was in existence, that you weren't sure how it was going to, affect the county, but you were watching it. And the reason why this came about and why it's in the audit report now is really because of COVID. There were a lot of businesses who didn't survive. They had audits done, and then the next year when COVID hit, they didn't survive. And so people rely on the financial data that's in your information. Mac just sent out the financial statements for a grant the other day, things like that. And then all of a sudden, if you can't continue as a going concern, then they've just funded something that really isn't going to exist in the next 12 months. And so that's why it's a concern. That's why they're putting the responsibility on you to really identify those things. And you'll notice as we talk about our responsibilities for the audit, there are the bullet points on page 2. We have to exercise professional judgment and professional skepticism. We look at the risk of material misstatement, and we'll talk about significant risk a little bit. We have to look at your internal controls. We don't give an opinion on your controls because we're not doing actual testing. We're just making sure that A, they exist, and B, they're functioning. You can implement all the controls you want, but if they're not functioning, then they're not doing you any good. That actually reminds me, side note, on your conflict of interest statements, I would add to that, not only doing it in your meetings, but every January you should be signing conflict of interest statements. If you want a copy of what they look like, then I can provide you with one. That's one thing that we'll probably be looking at every year. There's been some issues in some other municipalities where there haven't been signed statements, and then things come up, and that causes problems. So annually, you should sign a conflict of interest statement, and then in a meeting, you should identify and then recuse yourself on any voting. Sorry, that was kind of a tangent. All right, we also look at your accounting principles to make sure that you're doing things correctly. And then that last bullet point is we have to identify or analyze anything that comes to our attention while doing the test work that would prohibit you from continuing as a going concern as well. So if we see trends or a decline or things like that, or signals that say, well, San Juan County's having issues, but they may not succeed in the next 12 months, then we have to also do analysis as part of our audit, and we have to actually report on that. So first thing that we would do is get your analysis to make sure that we understand the situation and potential avenues that you have to overcome those things. There wasn't anything of that nature this year. We're just required to report on it. Required supplementary information. There are sections of the financial statements that do not fall under our opinion. That's the management's discussion and analysis that always follows the audit report. And then after the notes, there's a section called required supplementary information that contains your budget schedules and also the URS schedules that you're required to have. So those sections are not part of the basic financial statements, but GASB requires that you have them with your financial statements all the time. That's why they don't fall under our opinion. Supplementary information. So there is a section after the required supplementary information. I know this is getting a lot of accounting jargon, but that is your combining statements for your non-major funds. Because they're non-major in the basic financial statements, they're all combined into one column or one opinion unit, as we call them. However, you can present the details so that you can see the detail of those funds if you wish to, and that's considered supplementary information. And also the single audit is considered supplementary information. However, it's required under the uniform guidance. So that is also part of supplementary information, and that opinion always follows the opinion of the financial statements. So it's an in relation opinion to the opinion on the financial statements. All right, next report. If you want to flip to the very far back, page 71. I won't spend a lot of time on this one since there weren't any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, but this is a report that we're required to issue that says that we've done our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, and part of those standards require us to look at your internal controls. And what we're looking for is deficiencies in those controls that are significant in and of themselves, or multiple control deficiencies that would cause a material misstatement in your financial statements. However, there weren't any identified, so we'll just move on to the next one. Page 73. This is the report we're required to issue for the state auditor. So every year they provide us with what compliance requirements that they require us to look at. This year for the county, the applicable ones were your budgetary compliance, your fund balance, justice courts, restricted taxes, and the fraud risk assessment. That's all. We give an opinion on our compliance, and it's also an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. There was one immaterial finding that we'll talk about, but nothing significant. I think that the controls are in place. We actually are required to get a control documentation sheet from the county that describes who does what, when, and how often. And that's really how you define what a control is anything in the process where you can identify a person, what they're doing, and how often they do it. That's your control. So if there's a deficiency there, then one of those three things is what you need to fix. All right, the next report on page 75 is the report we're required to issue for the federal government, and this is just stating that we've performed your single audit under the guidelines of the uniform guidance. And it kind of mimics the audit report, so I'm not going to go through all the sections of that report just because it's a lot the same as what's in the audit report. However, we did give an unmodified or an unqualified opinion on your federal awards, so no issues there. And then the rest of the section, the document is really containing information related to the single audit. So you can go through that. There weren't any findings for federal awards or any significant findings that we would have to report as far as the financial statements go. You can see your schedule of awards. So for the county last year, you spent about $4 million in federal money. Anything over $750,000 requires a single audit. But everything was clean. Everything was good. We got the information that we requested. All of the documentation was in place. Thank you for being on top of things. Thank Mac's office and Lyman's office for that. We're dealing with American Samoa right now, except for their single audit's $400 million, and it's they've got some issues. Anyway, so I'm grateful that you guys are on track and that you guys are doing a good job. All right, communication to the commission. So there's certain things that I'm required to communicate at the close of our audit. Our responsibilities in relation to the financial statement audit and the plan, scope, and timing of the audit. So that is, I'm actually in the small stapled together one now. I forgot to say that. Sorry. All that information is contained in our engagement letter. That's why we give you an engagement letter and require that you sign that and send that back to us. Compliance with ethical requirements. So there are certain ethical standards that we have, and part of that is our independence. We have to be independent of the county. So that responsibility is on me as the partner to make sure that not only my team, but our firm is independent of the county. If there's issues, then I have to make sure that they're addressed and that we can overcome those. So that responsibility doesn't lie with the county. That's kind of my responsibility. All right, significant risk. So I said we'd talk a little bit about significant risk. This is kind of a new thing, and it's going to be here for the time being. We're now required to communicate to you the significant risks that we identified as part of your engagement. These have always existed. We're just now required to communicate those in a public meeting. We can actually put them in the audit report. However, I have not had anybody who wants to put them in their audit report. I don't know why you would. But a little bit of background, and I'll probably talk about this every year. This is nothing that the county did wrong or that the county needs to improve on. All of our audits are based on risk. So everything in your financial statements gets assigned a risk. So if we're talking about cash, it gets assigned a risk. If we're talking about capital assets, it gets assigned a risk. Revenue, your fund balance, each audit area gets identified, gets assigned a risk, and then we plan our testing around that risk. So for capital assets, typically capital assets have a lower risk because it's very easy to identify the cost of a capital asset or if something should be capitalized. Really hard to pick up a building and steal it or to manipulate it, or it's a vehicle. I mean, you can track a vehicle and make sure that you can recover that. It's hard to steal something like that. So risk in capital assets is fairly low. It's not misstated very often. Whereas cash, Cash inherently has a higher risk. It's easier to manipulate cash. It's easier to steal cash. It's easier to have a misstatement in the financial statements because of reconciliations or journal entries, things like that. So each area gets assigned a risk, and then we plan. So we do more testing over cash than we would typically on capital assets. Then overall, we have significant risks. So these are risks that we are required to identify just by their nature. So revenue recognition. This one, actually, it doesn't matter if you're a government or a for-profit, nonprofit, or a public company. We have to identify revenue recognition as a significant risk. And this came about with the fall of Enron and Arthur Andersen. What Enron was doing was manipulating their earnings and their revenue so that they could have increase the shareholder wealth. They wanted their stock to go higher and make their investors happy. So because of that, now we are required to make sure that we have significant risk, the significant risk identified as revenue recognition. And what we have to do additional procedures over your revenue to make sure that you're reporting revenue correctly. Cash disbursements, another significant risk. Because you are a government, you're dealing with public funds. The public is concerned about how you're spending money. It should be spent appropriately. Like we talked about, you had, $4 million in federal expenditures. The federal government is concerned about how you're spending money. So we do additional test work over your cash disbursements. And then the last one is management's bias, financial statement estimates, and management's ability to override controls. And this is all kind of lumped into one because this is internal things that you can do to manipulate the financial system. I could stand here and give you 150 ways on how you can commit fraud. One of these that's one of these ways. So management bias is in the notes of the financial statements. You can word things that make them appear favorable to the county, when in reality, maybe it's not favorable to the county, or maybe there's a liability that's in existence that you're, not reporting the full liability. So that could become an issue. Financial statement estimates, there's always estimates in the financial statements, and over time, those estimates can change. And our job, what we do is we look at those estimates to make sure that A, they're consistent over time as much as possible. And B, you're not changing how you're estimating to make your financial statements look better presentable. And then ability to override controls. Management has to have the ability to override controls. However, with that ability, you can also use that to change or manipulate the financial statements. The best example would be journal entries. All of your financial statement system is built on transactions. So as you assess property tax or you collect money, then you're going to record a revenue and record a receivable. That's how the transaction gets in the system. And then when somebody comes in to pay their property taxes, then you increase your cash and you reduce their receivable. So all of your financial statement system is built on transactions. If there's a mistake in the system, or if you have to recode something, or at the end of the year you're doing closing entries, you're doing a journal entry. Well, that journal entry is not a transaction. That is overriding the transaction control. So Lyman has to have the ability to make corrections in the financial system or to close out the year end. And he's overriding a control, but with that control, he can also use that to manipulate the system if he wanted to. So, like for instance, the test that we perform with that is we look at every journal that's created in the system during the year, and we do a sample test and make sure that all of the journal entries are reasonable. We understand what they're doing, and that there's a description and there's a backup for why that journal entry is being created. So overall, the whole point of this discussion is really there is significant risk, but it's more for us to plan our testing so that we can get to a comfort level where we can feel comfortable with our opinion. So that last statement there, based on our audit procedures performed, we did not identify any uncorrected material misstatements related to these risks. So what we're doing is we're looking for misstatements being caused by these risks specifically. All right, we talked about looking at your accounting practices and your accounting estimates. Significant difficulties in performing the audit. Like I said, the staff was very well. There weren't any significant difficulties. I will make a recommendation, and I'm actually trying to work with the state auditor to get this done, but your component units, if you can request that they have their audits done by the end of May, I actually would like to have the state make that a requirement that any component unit has their audit completed by the end of May. That's really what delays your audit getting done. And we probably had 5 or 6 counties that were delayed in issuing because of component units. And it's not just in the state of Utah. American Samoa is the same way. I mean, we're waiting and waiting for component units. So if you on your end could request that they have their auditors in and have their audit done by the end of May, that gives us time to roll those audits into your audit and get things done by June 30th. Uncorrected misstatements. There weren't any uncorrected misstatements that we were made aware of. There weren't any disagreements with management. Circumstances that affect the form and content of the auditor's report. So if there is something that comes up, if there's a misstatement, or if we are not able to test a certain area, then we have to change the language of the audit report, whether it's a qualified opinion, an adverse opinion, or something like that of that nature. Best example is we audited a hospital in American Samoa, and they've never ever tested revenue, and they get $100 million in revenue. And the auditors before us just pretty much just ignored it, but they qualified their audit every year. So every year their audit report would be modified because of that. Let's see, consultations with other accountants. If there is an issue that comes up, then you're more than welcome to go out and talk to a third-party audit group or another CPA firm. Our only request is that we know that you're talking to somebody, and we also have access to them so that we can present our understanding of whatever the situation is, that we can come to a consensus, and then we move forward with the audit. Management representations, we get a representation letter signed by management, and that's kind of an open and honest communication back to us that you've given us all the information that we've either requested or things that you know of that we should be made aware of. And the reason why we do that is kind of the same reason why we give you an engagement letter. We get a representation letter at the end stating that you're not aware of any internal issues, that you're following accounting principles, that you've made us aware of any litigation that's going on, any potential liabilities, contingencies, things like that, so that when I'm reviewing our audit work and I'm reviewing our opinion, I can be comfortable. I guess a good example to explain that would be if there's a litigation or a liability out there that you don't want to talk about, you know that the county kind of paints a bad picture or something, and we're not made aware of it, and it doesn't get recorded in the financial statements even as a note disclosure, then all of a sudden that opinion that we gave is no longer valid because there's a material liability that did not get reported in the financial statement. So that's why we get the representation letter, just kind of a full disclosure letter from management. Let's see, let me discuss anything else. So the one finding that we had this year was actually a budget finding. So the assessor's department and the sheriff's department both exceeded budgeted expenditures. And I don't know that I really need to go into a lot of details as far as why that's an issue, but in the code, really the county cannot contract with anything in excess of budget appropriations. If they do, then according to code, then the county's actually not liable. It could fall back to the individual who contracted with that. I don't know that they've ever followed through and pressed that, but it's in the code and they could. So it really is just both the department heads and you as a commission group should be looking at financial reports at least at a minimum on a quarterly basis, looking at budget to actual, making sure that, hey, we're getting close to budget in this, making sure that you have enough budget. A lot of times what happens is there's things that come in at the end of the year. So just make sure that you give yourself enough grace and kind of budget enough to hopefully capture those things. We typically won't report on a budget finding unless it's material. And material means it's typically about 5% of the revenue of that fund or the expenditures. And that guideline actually came from the state auditor. We used to actually have to report on if you were over $1, then we had to report over $1. So I'm glad that they kind of gave us a little bit of leniency where it's 5%. But that just tells you the amounts that were over were fairly significant. And you can read in here, we actually got a response from the assessor's office as well as the sheriff's office and Mac's office. So you can read through those. I won't spend the time to go through those, but just be aware of that. I don't see it as a concern going forward. I think that it'll get corrected. So no worries there. So status of prior year findings. So deficit fund balance. There were a couple of funds that had deficit fund balances, and that was the tort liability fund as well as the EMS fund. Both of those still have a deficit fund. However, they were reduced by the required 5%. So that's why it's not a current year finding. So just continue this year to reduce that by the 5%. Make sure in your budget you have a line item that's, you can call it, I just tell people to call it budget deficit reduction. And just make sure that it's 5% of the revenue, and then followed by your budget. That way you should have enough net income to reduce that deficit a little bit further. If it gets under 5% of the revenue, so the amount of the deficit is less than what you calculate as 5%, then you have to eradicate the entire amount. But that's why it's not a finding this year. So that's all I had. Any questions?
You were speedy today, John.
I tried to be. I know you got to get out of here.
Thank
Sylvia
you.
has notes.
Appreciate that.
After I read the 70 plus report, I had some questions,
Okay.
but you answered them. I had a list here, but you answered all of them, so
Good.
thank you. So the main thing is just knowing that, that we are doing good and we can improve.
Yep. And if there's ever questions or if concerns come up, I'm always happy to take phone calls. So I'm pretty sure Bruce has me on speed dial.
Thank you.
It's good to
Okay,
see you,
do
Mitch,
we-
back there. How are you? I haven't seen you for a while.
Good.
That's a good thing. Huh?
Old Spanish fork buddies.
Yeah. Mitch used to be in our office
Yeah.
for a while.
So do we have a motion to accept the report?
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thanks, John.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
Mac, you're up.
All right. So just wanted to come back and touch bases on the San Juan County's local broadband plan. I didn't stick this in your packet. Everywhere we've tried to upload it, even to the state system, they come back and tell me it's too large. So they had to zip the file to me, and so I didn't get you that. We do have bound copies that I'll get you of the report. So overall, the state of Utah did a broadband plan for the entire state. We had reached out to the Utah Broadband Center when they were marketing grant opportunities, and we were awarded $50,000 to kind of focus on San Juan County. And so the results of that $50,000 is this plan here. We're grateful for the opportunity from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity because it gave us the experience and opportunity to go in with the chapters. Ute Tribe, Paiute Tribe is also part of this. So kind of everywhere down south is really what is covered with this plan. Each of our chapters, we met with either us or Horrocks had gone through and met with the chapters, the tribes, try to figure out where they're at in their planning process, and as well to kind of put some financial numbers to it so that when the state reports back their plan, we're included in that, but we have more refined numbers based off of us and our needs, especially the chapters' needs. And it was interesting as we went out to the different chapters, the difference in levels that they have with either planning or just general internet opportunities. We're fortunate here. We're really frontier instead of rural. And when you look at that frontier portion of it, Elon Musk has been very helpful to us. A lot of citizens throughout the county have Starlink, but Starlink, when you look at it, that's $200 a month. So a lot of our Native Americans throughout the county, that's not necessarily affordable. And so it's how do we get affordable internet to their homes, and this broadband connection is part of it. We've also been fortunate in the county where we had partnered in the past with Emory Telecom and UETN and received federal funds to get fiber optics to the county. And that covered the northern portion of the county. It kind of ends at Mexican Hat, continues down the road to Old Jado, and then is supposed to loop back up in to Navajo Mountain. So we're fortunate that we had federal funds already set aside that had come to the county for that implementation. But obviously, you have all these other chapters that are kind of left in the dark because that money could only go so far. Installation of that fiber optic is taking place right now with NTUA as they continue to install that network up in Navajo Mountain. Now, NTUA has been, obviously they're kind of the ones that are taking charge throughout the Navajo Nation of broadband for the Navajo Nation. They're the partner for it, but there's difficulties that they have getting it to Utah. I think they're working right now on a connection into Aneth and Montezuma Creek, but then you've got Red Mesa, Mexican Water, all the other chapters that are still left behind. The Ute tribe is one of them that is also left behind. As we went through this study, it was looking at, okay, who's bringing it to us and who's not. And it also, in an effort with the chapters, is to kind of slow their request. When a couple of years ago, we had one commissioner that was demanding that he have a tower outside his home. That was about a $3 million ask just for that tower. And so as these telecommunication providers come into these areas and see opportunities, they see opportunities for federal funds as well. And so installation of towers is something that is a current discussion that chapters are entertaining. When the discussion down at Tees Nos Post, they were looking at 5 or 6 towers to cover their community. Well, towers are good when weather is good, but fiber optics are the best. That's the best alternative. And so, as we had discussions with them, some of them turned back to Utah and they're like, well, where's the best place to install these? And, what's coming down the line. So a lot of just miscommunication. And I'd seen that early on as we had met with in these broadband meetings that are kind of statewide, where we get a conglomerate of the Four Corners states together, all of the states that represent the Navajo Nation. We were in a meeting with the state of Utah, with UDOT, trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with broadband. That was apparent that, some of our chapters are left behind, and it seems like that squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it's interesting that the squeaky wheel was Navajo Mountain, and they already have it coming. And so it's kind of interesting as we went through this. But we're still not done. All of this is just the plan to get it there. It doesn't come with the fundings for implementation, and that's kind of the next step that we're hoping for as the state of Utah applies to the federal government for more broadband coverage, more broadband funding. It gives us an opportunity to be right there on the table where we already have cost estimates of what it would take to get it to the rest of the county. As we've gone through the chapters, it was interesting to note on here is the Navajo Nation, when they push down funds, and Jamie, correct me if I understand it wrong, as they push down funds, they want to see it at the local level, that it's in their CLEPSIs, their community plans. And a lot of internet is not in the community plans. And so part of this study will give us that ammunition to take back to the chapters, say, okay, here's what we need to put in your CLEPSI. Once that's in your CLEPSI, then it's easier to apply for the Navajo Nation funding once it's in your plan. It's kind of like us. If it's not in a plan, all of a sudden we're making something up, then the state or the federal government doesn't want to fund it. But if it's in your plan, that means you're thinking through, that you're ready for it. And that's really, as Commissioner Sylvia, you've gone with a couple of our meetings and you've heard their concerns and their issues. It's interesting, when we went through this plan, there were some residents of an older generation that they don't want internet. They are adamant that internet is not good. It's not good for the youth, so don't bring it here. Now, that's not necessarily everybody's take on it, just a segment of the population that had represented that, which is, I can understand their concerns with that. But the next steps for us is that implementation, putting the funds from this study to that proposed use, and hopefully in the future, then the state can get funds or the county can apply for funds, and we have a plan that kind of backs up that dollar figure, because I'm not a broadband expertise. I don't know how much it's going to cost unless we go to a provider, and typically there's a markup with it. But in this plan, in the implementation section, it shows the costs and everything that are associated with each chapter, how much it would take to get broadband internet there. There are providers out there that are doing kind of a microwave system. That microwave system kind of concerns us because they will stick the tower with the microwave adjacent to the home that has power. Well, if they're mad at their neighbor, imagine as soon as I check my email and everything, I'm going to go pull the plug because I'm mad at my neighbors and I don't want them to have internet. And so complete control, if you treat it, and what we're asking it to be treated as a public infrastructure system. When it's a public infrastructure and it's an essential infrastructure need, then treat it like that, not treating it like just a private based requirement to provide it to our citizens. And so it kind of shifts to that. It was interesting when I met up. They had a conference, kind of all of the players in broadband throughout the state of Utah, and the Navajo Nation representative for their broadband department was there. And I was talking to her kind of about her barriers and the challenge that she's having. And this poor lady, she was completely stressed. She's in an office of 2 people, herself and a partner, to cover 128 chapters throughout the Navajo Nation. And I told her, I says, hey, look at us as an extension of you. We can help you out for the Utah portion. If you'll give us letters of support, so when it comes time for funding requests, then we would appreciate those, because that's what's needed. And she was grateful for the opportunity to meet us, but know that we're back there supporting her, and she doesn't have to pay us for staffing. It's something that we're doing on our own. And so it was just a good opportunity in that meeting to meet her and understand her concerns and understand why it's slow and difficult to get to the Navajo Nation and then throughout. And then the discussion with NTUA, we asked them, well, where are you at? What current plans do you have? They have current plans to go into, like I mentioned, Aneth and Montezuma Creek, and then into the Red Mesa. But in Red Mesa, they're stopping at the school. And that school is kind of on the Arizona border, nothing really up in the Utah portion. And so it was good to just know where they were at in the process. In the meeting with them, they expressed the same as, they've got to go through right-of-way clearance and everything else to get broadband, and they go overhead with their system. A lot of power lines need to be upgraded. The power poles won't hold it. And so they're at a difficult kind of a standstill as well, because they've got to provide all of the Navajo Nation, yet they've got to upgrade poles at the same time and get governmental bureaucracy clearance as well. And so in that same meeting, we're like, well, let us help you where we can. There's not a lot that we can help through the Navajo Nation's government system or through BIA. But nevertheless, we did have that discussion, and the outcomes of it was pretty positive. As we gain that relationship with them to kind of help coordinate what's going on, and especially if the state of Utah receives funds. But then also you've got New Mexico on here that can receive funds. Colorado is receiving funds for the Ute tribe. And so it's a bigger coordinated effort on the states as well as ours to make sure, the Ute Nation, they received funds. Well, broadband goes right through their front neighborhood along the highway, and they can't connect to it unless Toyok says that they can connect to it. And that ask is about 2 years away. I'm like, why 2 years? And a lot of that, I think, is just communicating that with them that, hey, you can connect to the Emory system already and hold your funds and disperse them everywhere else. It doesn't necessarily have to be right here because it's already here. Let them connect. And so there's still some implementation and follow-up meetings that we have to go through and meet with the chapters, give them the results of the plan. We have kind of bound this in a prettier presentation wise to give to the chapters so they actually have the plan that they can adopt and put to their CLEPSIs. And then moving forward, it's okay, what's the next steps for you? As Utah comes out with funds, we'll be certainly quick to jump on those grants to see if we can get to the implementation side of it.
One thing too is not only implementation and coordination, it's the education. As we work with wastewater with the carbon power, just because we have power in our property line, that doesn't mean automatically we get it for out of no cost.
Mhm.
And so now trying to educate, inform people, electric heaters use lots of power. It kind of show them how to minimize the use. And if you don't pay, the power gets turned off. And so there's another form on top of what we're doing is educating. Just because internet's coming to the area, and it's a service that it's not automatically coming to you. You have to pay for the service. It's just the opportunity to have the service, and that is another component that as we go around, people are learning more. And
Absolutely. Welcoming it a little bit more. There will be an education piece. There will have to be as we kind of move forward. And, when you look at opportunities to educate youth on proper internet utilization and pits that they can fall into, there's a component that has to be taught to hopefully kind of broaden the horizons with that that older generation that sees that internet really isn't good for youth. Well, hopefully we can help them where it opens up more educational opportunities. The whole world, international world, kind of opens that up. But more importantly, also that education and telehealth is also a component of this. In our chapters, they do have the education system that is available for our students, and if they can't log on to those, then they have the MiFi packs that the schools let out to students as well. But that's restricted. It's restricted and filtered content, based off of the school's parameters, and so it's not all free and open for all of the citizens, and so that kind of left a piece on there. But in here, there are the costs. I mean, these are significant costs to get it there. But I think this gives us that baseline to know what we need to apply for. And it kind of gives the state also an opportunity to know what they also have to reach out to the federal government for assistance with. Other than that, that's kind of an overview of that.
Okay, we
Study.
appreciate that presentation, Mac. We'll move on to number 8, consideration and approval of an appointment. You want to tell us about that?
Okay, yes. So on here, let me get to that item, catch up with where we were at on Zoom. Okay. So this one is the consideration and approval of the appointment of Dr. Melissa Rigg to the San Juan County Planning Commission. In our current bylaws, it's pretty restrictive in our bylaws, and you've probably seen emails from the public noting that we're not following the bylaws, of which we should. In here, it requires, planning commissioners shall not miss more than 3 consecutive meetings. Planning commissioner may not miss more than 25% of the meetings in a year. And then if circumstance prevent faithful attendance and performance of planning commissioner member duties, the member will be removed from the planning commission, or a member shall knowingly resign from the planning commission. Attendance through remote means may only be approved by planning commission chair, and a commission member must attend more than 50% of the meetings in person, absent of extenuating circumstances. We do have the current representative of Bluff who has not met that threshold and is not meeting the bylaw requirements on here. the bylaws also offer an opportunity for the commission to either, if the person resigns themselves, or the commission can remove this individual and appoint somebody else, and that's what we're looking at here. Because the current representative has not attended in live planning commission meetings more than that 50%. As a matter of fact, I can't remember a time when there was an actual appearance since his appointment. Because of that, I'm asking for that removal of the individual and the placement and appointment of Dr. Melissa Riggs. Prior to this, previous discussions of the previous representative for Bluff, when she had reapplied for reappointment to the position, that was one of the concerns that was expressed by the town of Bluff, as well as several others, that this individual wasn't always on the phone. She was always on the phone, or she was by video, but never in attendance. She had resided in Alaska at the time, so she was attending meetings from Alaska, which if internet costs were so high and she ran out of minutes, then she'd be on by phone. So you can imagine in a planning commission, we're showing maps and we're pointing at things on the maps. If they're on a phone, they don't understand. They don't understand exactly what we're doing, what we're looking at, what we're talking about, and then they vote. And my concern is if you don't have them in attendance and they can't see the materials that we're presenting, I don't understand how they vote on it, because they don't fully grasp everything we're talking about. To me, that's kind of an opportunity for issues. If, the public would say, you had an individual that's voting on it, didn't even see what we were talking about or the changes that were made, yet they voted. And so that's kind of where we're at in the concern. This individual, I did reach out last planning commission and say, hey, you're making it today, right? And he'd mentioned, yes, I'll be in attendance. Later that night, he was not in attendance. And so to me at this point, we've got to start following our bylaws and kind of take matters in our own hands, replace him and stick somebody on there that's gonna show up to our meetings.
Do we have a motion to remove Mr. Dobson from the Planning Commission representing Bluff and appoint Melissa Riggs to fulfill the remaining term of Mr. Dobson's position?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Sylvia,
I'll second.
second by Jamie. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Now, the next one is a resolution. Do we have to go into any kind of a,
No,
okay, just
no,
take a look at it?
yeah.
Okay, why don't you,
This one here is
Explain it to us a little bit.
consideration and approval of resolution 2023-08, a resolution stating the support of San Juan County for the established municipal boundaries of the town of Bluff, and in connection therewith, stating opposition to the current municipal disconnection petition now pending before the Bluff Town Council. I had been approached by Mayor Lebanon, who had asked that we place this on our agenda for consideration, receive the documentation in it. This is a resolution that was drafted there by the town of Bluff. In it, it shows their boundaries of the area that's looking at disconnect, as well as their overall annexation plan that was original to the formation of the town. Heard several public comments in here from a council member, as well as from Sitla, that kind of coincide with this item that you have today.
so if we pass the resolution, are we codifying the boundaries, or are we saying we're in agreement with the withdrawal by Sitla and the private property owner?
So no, if you pass the resolution, you would be in agreement with the town of Bluff and their overall annexation, their annex plan, which would include these parcels that are trying to disconnect.
And Sitla does not want those included in the,
Sitla does, that's what they stated, they do not, as well as the individual property owner that is in connection with this.
in section 16, right?
I
That looks like a private,
private property.
it's
Yeah.
private property, okay.
That, and then there's some white parcels down here that will also be annexed.
Okay. And we've heard from Mr. Hook. Why?
Slayer.
So,
Yeah, from saying why he thinks it's important to include that. Was it not included in the original boundary?
It is.
The town boundary, all of that area, I think, Mr. McDonald can point out the area of the town boundaries. It's a large town boundary.
Isn't that the yellow?
So the yellow, but then it included this purple as well. The purple area is what is trying to
Disconnect.
disconnect.
But the yellow is the
town.
boundary, right?
In addition to, yes.
so can we make comments?
Absolutely.
I did read the San Juan Record article, and I did. I think I've given lots of thought of this decision. I knew it was coming, and I think I would have said the same thing for if the other side was applying. And this is just my personal. I don't know how the other commission feels, but you know, we have sometimes we have to make decision as a county, and sometimes other organizations are trying to come and influence our decisions, and it's really hard sometimes when we have that. And so I put in both sides equally, trying to figure out my decision. You know, as we, in one hand, we had land ownership. And when I was doing land ownership before, I have a training on land ownership. It was really hard for me to decide, well, but once I learned that land ownership has certain rights, and if people jump through the hoops, no matter how I feel, I had to accept, you know, the outcome of the was presented before me. And so in one hand, I have land ownership. In another hand, I have a government that sometimes I had to make decisions as government. The other people don't approve or don't approve nor support us. And I want to say that is whatever decision I say here is not against either side. I just want to do a neutral side and know that whatever side feels like I'm not supporting, I want that side to know that I had given a lot of thought. I had my weeds as I was weeding got lots of my talk, which I'm not saying it here, but anyway, so based on those thoughts, I feel like I cannot support the decision because I feel like the landowners they're going through the process. I feel like the city has things in place that they can deal. And I want to tell Bluff, I willing to support many things. And I want you to know that in February, I was invited to come to Bluff, and I went. I was so excited to go to Bluff, but it wasn't the kind of meeting I expect. I was basically hijacked by another group, and I didn't have the opportunity to talk to the people I wanted to talk and visit with. But having said that, I just say that either group were, if it was the other side, they would have heard the same talk. So anyway, I feel privileged that you guys think that you can bring before us, and I hope there are other things you guys can bring before us that we can work together and support. That support anyway.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Jamie, you have anything you want to say?
I have multiple questions I'd like to ask,
Okay,
and I'd get some important information. So I need some assistance in understanding the map that we have here, because there's purple, there's light blue, and there's white, and there's tan. And so the red section, from my understanding, is the land that is being purchased. Am I correct on that? Because in that red section, there's purple shaded, and white shaded, and tan shaded.
So it's
Councilman, do you want to
Yeah,
describe those?
sure. I believe that the purple shade, and correct me if I'm wrong, I also have another council member here, Ms. Linda Sosa. I believe the purple section is the public land known as the Bears Ears, or the National Monument land. We have the light blue, which are those sections, even on the left, are all Sitla land, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Torres? I agree. Thank you. And the white is private land. And the section 16, the white one up there, is the private land that wishes to separate. And Sitla, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Torgerson, Sitla has thrown in with those landowners, and the entire part. By the way, I think the yellow is either BLM or to south of the river, it's reservation, but the land that is circled by the red, on my map it's red, is the total amount of land to be withdrawn from the town of, the incorporated town of Bluff, or to be disconnected, as they say. Does that answer your question, Mr. Garner?
Yes, it does. A reason why I'm raising this point is if Sitla is asking to be disconnected, my question was, why would the purple, which is Bear's Ears, be included with that? And I guess that's my confusion is, that's not land that this new owner is going to be in possession of. It's the blue shaded ones, right?
I know, I'm not sure that the purple down there is,
Sorry, we can't hear the person in the audience.
yeah, go ahead, if you can answer that.
I'm just trying to assist. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, no, that's
I believe the
appreciate that.
purple that you're talking about there below the light blue is
28.
federal lands
Correct.
that are a part of the Bears Ears current proposed boundary. Also, Sitla is proposing to exchange some of the lands, not all, that are in the petition in the exchange as well, but that hopefully that answers your question.
so is Sitla asking to withdraw those federal lands?
So the federal government does, and they're not here to represent. They weren't here to represent themselves at the Bluff hearing. But from what I understand, the federal government doesn't care if they're in municipal boundaries or whatever. They're not part of the petition in any way.
Oh, okay.
They don't really care.
So basically, it's just the Sitla lands and the section
these
16 of
privates.
Whiteland that are asking to be withdrawn.
private owners.
There's also a private land down
This piece.
below,
Yeah.
the 16
Yeah.
along the river there
Yeah.
that has, they have not asked to be withdrawn, but they have, Sitla has asked to
Put them in
withdraw
there.
those.
Okay.
So, and I would like to add, though, that's a very important point. That's the mission, the Episcopal
St.
mission,
Christopher's.
correct?
Okay.
Bluff City can approve, or the judge can approve the boundary without them being, if they don't want to be included in this disconnection, they don't have to.
Okay.
And they do not want to be.
And they, yeah, that's my understanding. I don't disagree with that. I don't think they want to.
What else, Jamie?
So I'm kind of looking at the bigger picture of this now. This is kind of like the Bears Ears Monument, where Sitla had certain parcels that it exchanged. And then here it's kind of that same situation. Sitla had those original areas under them, and it's Sitla who's making the decision to sell.
I want to clarify, we're not selling the lands at all. We do have a proposed solar lease. We would continue to own the land. We would just lease it for a solar farm. And the only reason why we're asking to disconnect is so the path forward's a lot clearer. And we're just asking that the county remain neutral, not pick a side. This resolution, it forces you guys to pick a side. We're just asking you to stay neutral in it.
That's that last paragraph in the resolution. San Juan County Commission hereby states its recognition of and support for the current incorporation municipal boundaries of the town of Bluff. County opposes the pending petition to disconnect federal, state, and private lands from the current municipal boundaries of the town of Bluff.
However, in the past, this has always been within the boundaries of the town of Bluff, correct?
So how
4
far
years.
what is the distance of the boundary? I mean, what is,
The town was incorporated 6 years
A
ago.
mile by 1 mile.
The town of Bluff was incorporated 6 years ago with these current boundaries within the town of Bluff. All landowners, including Sitla at that time, were notified that there was going to be a incorporation and were given the opportunity to withdraw at that time. No word was heard from the private landowners that are involved here or from Sitla at that time, as I understand it.
That's not how I understand it.
But you were notified that it was part of the incorporation.
We were notified that there was an incorporation, for sure, but we weren't agreeable to it. We thought that there were others who were essentially leading the charge on thinking that the size of the boundary was too big, so we didn't weigh in on it and at that point in time. Plus, we're exempt from local ordinances, but we like to work with local ordinances if we can. We just feel the path forward is a lot clearer through the county, and that's why we're looking to disconnect. The path forward within the city of Bluff is very convoluted.
The size of the boundaries right now is, I understand it is about 60 square miles. Is that right?
No, I think it's more like 35,
35 square miles.
something on that order, yes, sir.
so what is the size of Monticello?
Huh?
What is the size of Monticello?
Not 35
Much
miles.
much smaller, much smaller.
Significantly
35 miles is from here beyond Blanding.
Okay.
Well, I think my biggest concern, and this is just my opinion, is, today we've been talking about ordinances and being respectful of governments and the authority of the county as a government and local governments, the need to create policies and laws. If this has been under Bluff City, the town of Bluff, for the past 6 years, then I feel this is a matter that should go through the town of Bluff. And, it's being respectful of a government who's been exercising its authority for more than 5 years is the way that I consider this. And that's just my thoughts at the moment. Thank you, Commissioners.
Do you want to make a motion, Jamie? If we support the resolution, then we're not supporting the disconnect. Is that what it amounts
That is
to?
correct.
If we don't support the resolution, then we're somewhat supporting the disconnect. Or we're just kind of being middle of the road.
Just being neutral, basically.
Just being neutral.
Okay. Biggest question is there current litigation?
Pardon me?
Is there current litigation? Is this in the
It's
courts?
not current, but probably imminent is probably the best way to say it. And what I would add is it's not uncommon for municipal boundaries to change and evolve. Wab city boundary has changed and evolved. This one's changing and evolving smaller. But there's plenty of other land for them to work with.
Well, that is not entirely true. This is land that was partially considered as land that could be developed by bluff. There's very little, if you look down in the white along the river, that is private land. A lot of that is on bare rock. It's also in accretion lands along the river. This is a property that is able to be developed, and if it is withdrawn from bluff, our feeling is that it deals a real blow to the future of bluff.
But Bluff doesn't own the property.
That's correct, but if it
So
were,
how does it impact you differently if it's not included in your annexation? I'm not quite understanding.
Sitla land is available for lease or for purchase, generally speaking.
Right.
And that's the way it would work for the town of Bluff. We would, if it were purchased from Sitla, then as I understand it, the taxes would accrue to Bluff. And of course, any development that goes up on that bench, I think all boats rise on that tide. I mean, that's the way we feel in Bluff, that the town is very much involved in the development of the town. We're speaking for our residents, and we're speaking for our businesses as well.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion?
I have a motion with a statement. I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to accept the resolution. I think there's a valuable lesson for Sitla here. That lesson is it needs to listen to the people, the residents. And if Sitla is not listening, when will it listen? So I'd like to give the opportunity for the town of Bluff to be heard. So I make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to support the resolution. Do we have a second? Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second. So I guess we're neutral on it. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Jamie. All right, number 10.
Okay, the next one on here is consideration and approval of the LaSalle Transfer Station power installation. We've got Jed, our lovely landfill operator, coming here to present this item for you.
Good afternoon. So I believe we brought this last year with the old commission. We had a desire to get power out there just so that we could make operations simpler, more effective. We had a problem with Rocky Mountain Power being really slow, short-staffed. It dragged their feet for a long time. They finally got back to us within the last 30 days or so and said, okay, this is what we can do. So what you have before you there would be the cost from Rocky Mountain Power, as well as the additional cost up to the $22,342 would include the meter an underground, put an underground from Rocky Mountain Power's last pole to the transfer station. If we decided to go not underground, we'd have to put a service pole next to the building, which adds a little bit more cost to it simply because we can't find anywhere to get a service pole.
What do you recommend, Jed?
I would recommend just going underground from their last pole, yes.
Okay.
Because then we
A
can,
motion to
then we've
approve?
got a set cost there.
Have a motion to approve the request?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Sylvia,
A second.
second by Jamie. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Next one is consideration and approval of the Anna Transfer Station participation and purchase of transfer bins.
Okay, again, this is stuff that has been kind of ran through in the past. There's been past agreements with the tribe. It's just taken a long time to come forth. They are in the process of building their transfer station right now. I went down and inspected it and looked at it, and they're probably, I would guess, anywhere from 30 to 60 days away from completion. And upon that point, I'm sure they'd like to start using it. The thing that we don't have in place for that is in the prior agreements that we've made, like with the city of Monticello, city of Blanding, the landfill actually owns the dumpsters and we service them. We pick them up and dump them. They pay for the tipping fees, which is currently $44 a ton, and they pay for the freight. And so we've talked with Aneth, and they've worked that into their agreement, and so they're willing to do that. But with the other entities, we do have a contract in place. We don't have a contract in place with Aneth yet, so to begin with, we'd have to just probably start picking them up without a contract until we get something that we could agree to there. But what we don't have, we didn't put into this year's current budget, was the money to purchase those extra dumpsters we would need to have available at the transfer station. We do have some money in our, I think it's the landfill's capital expenditure fund that we could use to get those.
That's what we'd be using.
The total cost for those was going to be about $17,539 plus freight. So that'd be the freight out of Phoenix, Arizona. That's where they're going to be. We could save some of the cost of freight by just simply going and picking them up with our truck. But there would still be costs to
We'll
that
let you
too.
decide how to,
Okay.
on the freight.
Okay.
We have a motion. Let's don't delay this project any longer. It's been years in the coming.
It has been, yes.
Motion.
Motion by Jamie, second by Sylvia.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also.
Thank you.
Get her done.
All right, I appreciate it. I would just make one comment in leaving. As we work on that contract, make sure that it's a contract that, in future, if rates need to be adjusted, they could be readjusted and then recontracted or whatever, because, rates are never stable.
Right.
So anyway, all right, thank you, appreciate
Thanks.
it.
They never come down either, do they, Jed?
They don't seem to ever do that. Okay, thank you very much.
Always go up.
Thank you for all
So the
you
next
do.
item on your agenda is consideration and approval of the life cycle replacement purchase and contract of the San Juan County Sheriff's Office patrol for the Axon
Oh,
tasers.
Sheriff, you're gonna make him get on his knees, are you?
Awesome.
Okay. What do you got, Chaz?
So as what we have here is what you have in front of you is a detailed report from Deputy Sandifer, who is our taser trainer and certified to do that. He has identified some outdated issues with our current setup, so we are now aware of that, and it's been identified. Now we have brought this to you to correct the problems to prevent.
What's the
future-
total cost on that?
30 to I can't remember.
It's
right off the
it's
top
all
of my
right.
We
head.
already
I don't-
approved
It's in
that.
here
I don't
somewhere.
have to know that.
So 80,496.
But
Yes.
we've got the money to do it, right?
No, but we will with today's modifications
Okay.
to the budget. Yes. And this is, I've experienced this before in other counties where this 5-year cycle, that it's a must, a shall.
Yeah.
We don't get to sit on this. But with this contract, the thing I like about this is they provide the tasers, but they'll also provide additional, what is it? Yeah, the tips or the charges for it. This is something that is highly regulated by the federal government to us. Each officer, as they take this out, they've got to test it and make sure that it's firing and it has the proper voltage.
Come
And
and test it on us.
yes, they don't test it on each other, but they have a system that they test it on. And so these things, if you don't go through the replacement, if something happens, and we've seen in the past where deaths have been caused by tasers, misfire, or whatever, and so we want to make sure that the sheriff's department has the equipment that is not expired.
Better to use those than bullets.
Yes. But yeah, you want the cartridges, you want them to be the latest and greatest within that 5-year window. If not, your negligence and everything to this equipment goes up after that. And so they're willing to work with us on kind of the implementation as well as cartridge replacement. Seems like a pretty good company. This is kind of a sole source. Axon Enterprises, they have the corner on this market.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Do you want me to do it? I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sylvia to approve,
I'll second.
second by Jamie. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Okay,
Thank you.
get your tasers.
Thank you for your service. Bye, Sheriff.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
All right, the next one on here is consideration and approval of 3 candidates for possible appointments to the Grand County Water Conservancy District. We had received this request. We, since its inception, we have participated with Grand County Water Conservancy District with board members. We currently have a board member, and in the past, when it comes time for reappointment, or if somebody resigns their term, then it comes to each of us, each entity that kind of helps oversee this district. So Grand County, they had reviewed this last commission meeting. First of all, GWISA, or Grand County Water and Sewer, they go through kind of the vetting process similar to what our boards do here in the county, and made a recommendation to the county of what GWISA recommends in those bodies. They go through and vet the applicants, make sure that they meet the qualifications and criteria to be on the board. They have listed us 3 names
So,
that they recommend.
so they have already gone.
Yes,
They're just giving us the list for approval.
correct.
And so,
Well, we're a user.
Yes,
users
we
of the
are a
system.
user. It does feed into San Juan County side of Spanish Valley. We
no,
have
yeah,
connectors.
yeah, I understood that. I just was wondering if we had to make a decision about,
So
Well, we
the
should
process
make
is,
recommendations.
yeah, recommendation.
Yes,
by
so
whatever
we've
we
gotta-
had to-
we've got to list 3 people that we recommend, our top choice.
Yeah, so-
And then even Grand County's, QUISA's recommendations, they all feed up to the governor, and the governor makes the final appointment on whatever he feels best from people's recommendations. And so that's kind of the
I
back.
would recommend to the other 2 commissioners, Kevin Clyde, who is a older gentleman. I mean, he is a user of
Look
this.
like all of them are user of the
Yeah.
water and they have.
I'm not sure they're all
No, they weren't all
I
users.
don't think they're all users.
No. And in here, they mention whether or not they connected to the system or not.
I mean, the 3, they were approved. I thought they were all user, but maybe I misread.
Well, Kevin Clyde would be my first choice.
So if you look at Kevin Clyde, and I have him up on the board right
So
now.
we choose 1 out of the 3.
3.
Yep, 3.
We rank them.
So in here, he's lived in this area 19 years, but he owns shares in the GWISA irrigation and residential hookup to the GWISA culinary system.
Was
So
Lynn
he's a
Jackson
user.
A possible candidate?
Yeah. Let's see.
Somewhere I saw the list. It tells who.
I could have swore I seen his right here is Lynn's. Lynn Jackson is also on here. He's been a resident of Grand County since 1982.
I'd recommend him from the county commission too.
Okay.
I think he'd be a good candidate. He's a former county commissioner down there,
Okay.
really understands the issues in Spanish Valley. And then I'm not sure about the, yeah.
I thought I read the three that they were
So
recommending.
on regarding Lynn, in the letter from Grand County Water Conservancy District, they had indicated that Lynn Jackson, Kara Dorenwind, and Steve Getz are Grand County residents and good applicants, but do not meet all the criteria.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what
Now,
I remember reading.
just for transparency, Grand County selected their top choice as Kara Dorenwind, who again did not meet all their criteria. So
Is she qualified?
no, she's not
She's not qualified.
in her
We just selected
application. Yes, yep,
First.
and that's, I believe, some of the front page newspaper article in
Yeah.
Moab Times
So I
mentioned.
think we ought to recommend Kevin Clyde, and our second choice would be Lynn Jackson.
Okay,
And then I'm not sure about the third one.
on Guis's recommendation, let me
Yes.
get back to that and let's go through who they recommend. Because that's typical for us is we have the special service districts selecting their recommendations
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we would consider those highly. So the three that are recommended by Guisa, we've got Ken Holfenbein, Ben Wilson, and Kevin Clyde. So Kevin, as you had indicated, was one of your choices.
Yeah, Kevin would be my first choice.
Okay.
My second one would be,
Lynn Jackson?
Lynn Jackson.
Lynn Jackson, I've got him. So you're looking for the third, either Ken or Ben is who
Yeah,
Grand Water Conservancy
Ken would
District.
maybe be the third.
Okay.
Guys have any input?
Defer to you.
Okay,
We'll just,
want to make that motion?
Sure. It was Kevin Clyde, right?
Mhm.
And then Lynn Jackson,
Right,
and then
Ken Heflin,
Ken Heflin.
Heffenbean.
Fine, Bean.
Heffenbean would be as in order.
Okay, we
right?
have that motion and have them ranked in order. So do we have a second, Sylvia?
I'll second.
Second, okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, I will draft a letter and send that back to
Yeah,
the operator.
and I don't know if we can do this at this time. Talk about the Bears Ears
Or
coordination.
commissioner
Is
comments.
that coming up later? Okay,
Yeah, we put it in
Alright,
commission
we'll do it
comments. Yeah.
all right. What's next on
Okay, we've got consideration and approval of an alcohol local consent for Min-E's Market in LaSalle Junction and Highway 191.
What kind of?
Alcohol.
Oh, a mini market?
Yeah,
Does this go through,
Well,
did this go through planning and zoning?
has not yet. Uh-uh.
Should that go through planning and zoning?
It's already zoned. It would be
Oh,
in
it
the
is?
commercial.
it's an extension of
A
the,
mini market?
Yeah, that's gotta go through.
Yeah, it's
If it's a permitted use, it
Well,
wouldn't have to go.
yeah,
And markets on the corner of LaSalle,
Yes,
where it used to
191
have
in
a
the
market
junction.
there. It used to have the gas station.
Yeah, it's in that complex somewhere.
Okay.
So we're okay to approve it? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
just a little, yeah, a little corner.
Just the first step.
Yeah, okay.
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Number 15, Mac.
Okay, we've got consideration and approval of the San Juan County minimum performance standards. This is for fiscal year 22, amendment number 2 with the state of Utah Department of Health and Human Services. We've got Grant on the online. You're on mute.
I tried
There
to
you go.
turn it-
Sorry, I'm connected via my phone's audio, so I had double mute. So thanks for letting me know. Can you hear me okay now?
do a little bit higher.
up. I'll turn it up.
Oh, sorry about this. Is this a little better?
Yeah, he's turning the volume up.
Great. We'll try this out. Thanks for letting me join virtually. Just had some other duties, just trying to juggle things. But it's good to see you all. This, as Mac was saying, this is a renewed contract with the state for our what's called minimum performance standards for public health. I have a brief overview here in the summary. This covers our core functions as a local health department. And this includes things like our administration of the health department, environmental health, emergency preparedness, things like epidemiology, a community health needs assessment process. So the things that I gave an overview of on in June, it includes an annual report to you all and to the citizens of the county. So this contract did present to our Board of Health on August 24th, and they approved it as well. This funding, combined with our local funding, constitutes our core funding. This ends up being about 15% of our overall budget, but it enables the remaining 85% of the overall funding. Again, combining this state funding with our local public health funding. So you can see how we've allocated some of this towards specifically for public health administration. The goal there was to reduce our indirect rate to a more reasonable range so that our other contracts, we were not in trouble with those because some of those stakeholders were concerned about a higher indirect rate. Other things you can see here is local epidemiology. Epidemiology is the study of the spread of disease, and where we have some unique health concerns and health burden in our county, we've aimed to prioritize this so that we have a local emphasis, a locally driven epidemiology versus say state or federal telling us what to do when it comes to epidemiology, as well as that locally driven community health needs assessment. So the total here from the state would be $163,603. And this would be in quarterly installments. And something unique with this compared to the others is that the state requires that the state contributions not exceed the county's per capita contribution for the delivery of these minimum performance standards. So this amount is based on our county's population at the most recent census.
Okay.
There are some other details and questions that I've been told to explore, and I'm happy to explain that further, but any questions so far?
No, we're a little short on time. We got some doctor appointments later today. Grant, so if you could, should we vote on that then?
If you're ready to, I'm
We have a
ready as well.
motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Motion by Sylvia
What did you motion, Sylvia?
to approve the amendment to the budget.
Okay.
Item 15.
Second.
Second by Jamie. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Okay, now you can move down to 16, Grant.
Great. So this one was formerly called HEAL, or Healthy Environments and Active Living Contract. I'll pause just a moment. Thanks, Mac, for scrolling. Great. So this is now called the Community and Clinical Interventions Contract. This has two focus areas, one around diabetes management and prevention, and then similar with cardiovascular disease or heart disease management and prevention. And these are a little bit unique in that it requires us to partner with clinical partners, and you can see things like the National Diabetes Prevention Program, different intervention ways that we can help people either manage diabetes better or even better, right, prevent it in the first place. Sometimes we say delay as well. So you can see here, this is $23,528 approximately in the reimbursable funds, requiring no match. This is a reduction in previous years. There's just one section that was ultimately cut. So we've just adjusted our activities due to the smaller amount here, but it's been a great partnership with our local partners, really been a showcase of how we can reach frontier and tribal and rural populations.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Grant.
Thanks, Grant. Okay, this next one, you've got consideration and adoption of a resolution 2023-09, a resolution approving the form of a lease purchase agreement with Zion's Bank Corporation, Salt Lake City, Utah, and authorizing the execution and delivery thereof. Last commission meeting, you guys approved the purchase order for the task force vehicle.
Right.
You also approved the grant contract initially a couple of months ago as well. This is just the paperwork that coincides with making that transaction happen.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Number 18.
Okay, number 18. Let's see. We catch up with consideration and approval of the notice of award and intent to negotiate a contract with Points Consulting LLC for a housing and community needs assessment for San Juan County for a total not to exceed $84,300. This again, you'll see later on the budget. Elaine's office has been working to try to get a housing and community needs assessment countywide. This also includes the Navajo Nation. We went out to RFP. Through the results of the RFP, the committee is recommending Points Consulting LLC to be awarded that. I'll bring back a contract here at a later date, but this is
Good.
just the notice that we're awarding that to them.
Motion.
A motion to,
Motion by Sylvia,
Second.
second by Jamie. Any further discussion?
I just want to make a comment. This study is not only good for housing, it has so much other statistics and information that can help us with other grants and other, it's a good resource for us to have.
Okay, very good. All in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye also. That's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Now do we need to go into public
You
hearing?
do.
Okay, do we have a motion to go into public hearing to consider approval of a new resolution?
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
A second.
second by Sylvia. Okay, we're now in public hearing. Do you want to?
Okay, I'll go through it and describe it, and then
Okay.
we'll turn it to the public if there's anybody around. So this one here is consideration and approval of resolution 2023-10, a resolution pursuant to section 17-36-26 UCA 1953 is amended, approving the additional budget appropriation requests and or mid-year adjustments funded by new revenues, grant funding, and or monies unspent in the prior year. With that, I've provided a spreadsheet on here. Hold on, let me let somebody in. Okay, in general, with our taxes, and you guys had approved the tax rate and everything, you kind of see these adjustments. What we had originally had in our general tax, the total that we originally had was 1.8. With everything after we set that rate, you're at 2.1 million. We are missing some items on here. We didn't have that as we tallied the totals here, but we'll catch up with those later. These are the most critical ones, but you also see the additional revenues in charges for services that have already exceeded their initial budget. So you have an adjustment on here of 564,136 for additional charges. If you remember back in the legislative session, they changed the format for how much state reimbursement. That change resulted in $275,000 for that process that we championed during the legislative session. So
Right.
hats off to our sheriff's office and just throughout the state for that effort. I know all of us rural counties, these southern Utah counties, were pretty much behind that, telling the state that they need to pay more. You have public defender restitution that's increased as well. We had originally budgeted $4,000. That's come in so far at $89,000. Our interest earnings is probably the most impressive. We had originally budgeted $80,000, and that was in correlation with previous years. Our interest earnings are up to $333,000 already, and so we'd certainly welcome that. We did receive that final portion of the LATCF revenue, which is $4.3 million. So that is incorporated in here. And then as well as the beginning fund balance to be appropriated. We had originally budgeted $199,000. That actually comes out to $1.1 million. Part of this is as we spent the LATCF revenue or ARPA funds or appropriated it last year. If we didn't make that expenditure, it rolls to this year. So there's some expenses that will be on this year's budget that we've got to account for out of those funds. And so that's why you see such a big change.
Like salaries and things like that?
No, this was, if we went to purchase like a Dell server, and that Dell server we purchased in December, but it didn't hit the books until January, then we missed last year's accounting for it, and it falls into this year's cycle. And so I'll make those adjustments before the end of the year budget, so that we know exactly where we are with our expenditures, whether it's through the LATC, if predominantly ARPA is what we've been using. So on the expenses side of it, you have modifications in travel, gas, oil, and grease, employee education to your budget. Obviously, going off of past cycle, we're a little bit different than in the past. And so because of that, you guys are going everywhere. You've got a lot of new new government elected official training that you're going to. Because of that, you've exceeded those items on there. On the administration, my travel, I also adjusted for that. We didn't anticipate Detroit. Detroit is a grant funded, reimbursable. And so I bumped those up to cover for the two, so the Washington, D.C. and Detroit trips for ICMA as well on there. Our administrative law judge, obviously, with all the work that he's been doing, original budget was $25,000. We bumped that up to $35,000. We're about $25,000 now. This will give $10,000 for the remaining of the year as he works through these overnight rentals and new ordinances that we have. Under personnel, I've got miscellaneous supplies. We've about exceeded that $5,000. I'm bumping that up to $10,000. This is an ARPA grant where employee wellness, HR efforts, you can actually use for ARPA funds. So I designated and notated that on there. Under the Sheriff's Department, as we made the changes in March with the salary increases, that was not corrected in our books. And so originally it looked like they were forecasted to go over their budget by $500,000. That is not the case on here. So I've trued up both salaries and wages in the sheriff's and the jail with FICA and retirement benefits. That's the bulk of the adjustment with them. And so that it corrects what they had. So around $372,000 is their adjustment. Today you did approve the taser, that $80,000. I added that in there. I kind of see the taser in that implementation rather than to go direct to a weapon, an actual bullet weapon, because of the mental health has popped up and increased here because of COVID. I think we can argue pretty carefully that because of that mental health, using tasers as the first drawdown kind of supports that mental health issue that we have here in the county and that increase due to COVID. Sheriffs was strictly just to make that adjustment to get them back true. Special projects, I added $100,000. Part of that is recognizing these grant awards that we received, the one from ICMA as well as the planning grant. I've also included that in the contracts portion of it, the adjustment for today's item that we had on the agenda for that housing assessment. We don't have that. We don't have funds in economic development right now to cover that. In economic development, they wanted to know the price, and then they would seek grant funding for that. It's kind of a qualifier. We're working on studies to prevent homelessness or low-income housing due to COVID. And so I feel that that would be pretty easy qualifier under ARPA funds as well. If they can receive grant fundings and offset, that's fine. But at least this gets us underway, and then we can worry about the grant funding later on there. And so that's kind of where you're seeing those adjustments to the budget. And these are strictly, let me go back up. On the recorders, there was a $2,000 recorder request. They're out a computer. We need to upgrade one of their computers in there, and so I delegated or appropriated $2,000 for that. Down below, you're kind of seeing just the property tax adjustments with the health department. In here, let's see, between what they had anticipated and what we received, that was $1,723. In Fund 63, which is kind of a tort liability, increase on there was $385 or $383. Then in the library with their taxes, there was an increase of $4,263. So small, but we need to make those adjustments so that I'm sure the library can easily spend that for $4,263.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this budget adjustment? Seeing none, we'll receive a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. We are now out of public hearing back into our commission meeting. Do we need to now vote on approving the resolution? Right?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the resolution adjusting the budget for this year?
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jamie, a second by Sylvia. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Okay, now do we need to go into Board of Equalization?
You can go back into the commission meeting and then make a motion to go into.
Well, we're back in commission.
No, you have to make a motion to go back into the commission meeting. You just voted on the resolution.
No, we voted to come out of public hearing
Okay.
back into our commission meeting. And then we voted on the resolution.
Okay.
So now I think we need to vote to go into
Correct.
Board of Equalization. Do I have a motion to go into Board of Equalization?
Motion.
Motion by Jamie, second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also. Okay, Rick, you're up.
All right. So we had a very successful Board of Equalization last week with Judge Kelly, Randy Kelly. And we need these signed by you, Bruce. So we only had 5 appointments, which was I thought was good. And
Do I sign it as the board officer signature?
so we and then we did not know in your packet, did you all receive these?
Yeah, do you want to see the size of our packet? Every week we get a packet.
So this is what we're.
Yeah, they're out there.
This is what we're looking at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So we want to go through those. We had about 28 different parcels different owners that we approved different items. A lot of those were classification corrections, primary residential going to secondary residential, or vice versa. And we did go through Wilson's Arch with their 80 some odd parcels. And that was Wilson's Arch was the bulk of the changes. But we did find some escape properties in our going around the county and So those were put in there as well. Some green belt changes.
Okay, and you're recommending from Board of Equalization to approve all of the above.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item, or do we have to go back out?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Sylvia to approve the Board of Equalization changes,
I'll second.
second by Jamie. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
I approve too.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, do we have a motion to come out of Board of Equalization?
Motion.
Motion by Jamie, second by Sylvia. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also, that's 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Now, commission reports, if you don't mind, I want to take just a second on one commission report item, because I'm going to have to leave here pretty quick. I've got a doctor's appointment. We've been invited as San Juan County to be a cooperating agency with BLM on Bears Ears Monument Plan. And I think that's highly, highly appropriate. For some reason, Grand
We
County
got two
was also
invited.
invited to be a cooperating agent. I want to write a letter to the BLM, letting them know that we, as a commission, can handle the cooperating agency designation in San Juan County without the help of Grand County.
Well, and the thing is, they have zero interest.
No,
I mean, as far as,
there's nothing.
they don't have,
And I think we ought to have Mac draft a letter to the BLM asking them to only include us, and also send a copy of the letter to Grand County so that they know our feelings about them being cooperating agents in the Bears Ears Monument. If you guys are all right with that, I'm gonna ask Mac to draft that letter.
I read that,
I support it.
that email, and
Okay.
I support it.
Okay, very good. I am going to slip out of here pretty quick because I'm on my way to Spanish Valley to a doctor's appointment.
I
But
mean,
you're welcome to give your reports,
we can skip
and
the
I'll see you
report and
over
go.
at Bryce
You want
Canyon.
to skip your report?
Sounds good, Commissioner.
We can just
Yeah,
skip report and go.
Okay.
report.
You want to
All
skip
we need
it?
is a motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Jamie,
I
second
second.
by Sylvia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye also, that's unanimous.